Psychedelic Medicine, Past, Present, Future. This is the lecture for Module 2, Psychedelic History, Part 1. For this module, we'll be diving into the use of psychedelic medicines leading up to the 20th century. Many, if not all, of the substances listed in this lecture are also still in use today. For the purposes of organization, I have separated psychedelic medicines based on when they were first used. For example, psilocybin-containing mushrooms were likely first used thousands of years ago, so it was placed in History Part 1. In contrast, LSD was first synthesized in 1938, placing it in History Part 2. For this lecture, I'll go over the global distribution of psychedelics through time. Then I'll share some highlights of the timeline starting around 9000 to 6000 BC. And I'll do a deeper dive on several major psychedelics, including ayahuasca, iboga, Psilocybe mushrooms, Amanita muscaria, and peyote. Throughout this lecture, let's hold in consideration how these cultures developed over time and how psychedelics may have influenced those cultures and the societies that formed from them. And this is by no means a complete list. My goal is to give a brief and introductory overview of the vast areas of the globe and spans of time during which psychedelics are known or speculated to have been used. The purpose of including this history is to acknowledge the deeper history and context of people using psychedelics, so that we can situate the modern and contemporary use of psychedelics in recreation, therapy, and research. So before we move on to the remaining modules focused on modern psychedelic medicine, this lecture will serve as a very brief overview of psychedelic global history, which could be an entire course on its own. Let's first explore the map and look at the global distribution of psychedelics. By no means comprehensive, you can still see that psychedelics are found across the planet. Starting with Africa, perhaps the most well-known psychedelic using group in Africa are the members of the Bwiti religion who use a preparation of psychoactive root bark called iboga. In other areas of the continent, there's evidence that psilocybin mushrooms may have been used by pre-Neolithic early gatherers in the Sahara Desert. Ancient Egyptians may have used blue lily and psilocybin mushrooms in their religious rituals. And evidence of psilocybin mushrooms have been found on the Ivory Coast and in Southern Africa. Across the Atlantic to the American continents, for thousands of years, entheogens have played a pivotal role in spiritual practices of most indigenous American cultures. Many Native American tribes used mescaline-containing peyote cactus across North America and Mexico. It is still used in modern day by the Native American Church. In Mexico and Central America, the Aztec, Olmec, Maya, and Zapotec used an impressive variety of psychedelics, including peyote, psilocybin mushrooms, seeds containing mescaline, morning glory seeds, 5-MeO-DMT, tobacco, Jimson weed or datura, water lily, and salvia divinorum. In Asia, the indigenous peoples of Siberia, from whom the term shaman was borrowed, have used the red-capped mushroom Amanita muscaria as an entheogen. In India, datura and cannabis have been used in Hindu religious ceremonies. And the ancient drink soma, which is described in the Rig Veda, may have been an entheogen. There are differing theories as to which psychedelic is most likely, ranging from Amanita muscaria to Syrian rue to cannabis, or a combination of these. Moving west to Europe, there is evidence of a range of psychedelics in use throughout history. Cannabis was used in ancient Eastern Europe in religious ceremonies. And in Greece and the Roman Empire, the annual festival of the Eleusinian Mysteries used the drug kykeon or ambrosia, which is thought to have been psychedelic. Mushroom consumption was common by Europeans in general, and there's evidence that psilocybin mushrooms were integral to Slavic and Baltic cultures. Amanita muscaria was used by the Sapmi people in the northern Arctic and possibly the Vikings as well. Finally, to the far south, in Papua New Guinea and New Zealand, there are groups who are known to have used psilocybin mushrooms. And it is suspected that the Aboriginal people of Australia use psychoactive substances. However, this hasn't been confirmed. The psychedelics on this slide don't exist exclusively in these labeled regions. For example, in this slide, we see the vast global distribution of Psilocybe mushrooms into present day. Now we'll move on to some highlighted points of psychedelic use or theorized use over time. As you'll see, there is a lot of overlap of dates and areas and substances. The history of psychedelic use is interwoven with cultural history and impacted by trade routes and the movement of people, as well as changes in climate. Starting with the Paleolithic period, in caves in the Sahara Desert in southeastern Algeria, there are frescoes of mushroom-holding shaman dating between 9,000 to 5,000 BC. There are many cave paintings throughout this region, like this one depicting a person holding a mushroom or giving a mushroom to another person. And these rock paintings of people with mushroom heads holding mushrooms. Similar mushroom drawings have been found in what is now Libya, Chad, and Egypt, all dating from a similar era. Dating around 4000 BC, there are cave paintings depicting mushrooms in Spain. In North America, peyote sculptures were found dating around 5000 BC based on the most recent carbon dating, indicating their use thousands of years ago. In Guatemala, there is evidence of mushroom use around 1500 BC. There were thousands of these mushroom statues believed to have been used to grind dried mushrooms for ceremonial use. Sadly, most of these statues were destroyed during the start of European colonization. In 1500 BC, the ritual drink soma was documented in the Rig Veda. The first written documentation was in 1500 BC. However, due to the oral passing of these teachings, soma could have been used earlier. Soma was a ritually prepared pressed juice, which was drunk by priests and was described in the Rig Veda to have what sounds like psychedelic effects. And dating to 1000 BC, petroglyphs were found in Siberia depicting anthropomorphic figures with mushrooms on their heads, thought to indicate Amanita muscaria mushroom. Also dating to 1000 BC, mushroom statues were found in Mexico, thought to depict Psilocybe mexicana. From roughly 1500 BC to the 4th century AD, the annual festivals called the Eleusinian Mysteries took place to celebrate the cult of Demeter. They would drink a substance they called kykeon, which is speculated to have been psychoactive or even psychedelic. In Homeric texts, it was described as honey with a, quote, magic potion added to it. Everything from ergots, which is a similar precursor to LSD, to poppy to psilocybin mushrooms has been suggested, though no consensus has been made. And here is a stone carving that depicts Demeter and Persephone both holding mushrooms, thought to be related to the Eleusinian Mysteries. Between 2000 BC and 1300 AD, the Aztec, Maya, and Olmec used peyote, psychedelic mushrooms, and many other psychedelic plants. Based on carbon dating of 2130 BC, there is evidence of 5-MeO-DMT in the Caribbean islands, which was used as a psychoactive snuff. And in the 14th to 15th centuries, there's evidence of Aztec glyphs and statues depicting morning glory and psilocybe mushrooms. Then starting around the 15th century, during the time of European colonization, more of the documentation and history shifts to European explorers and naturalists discovering and describing psychoactive plants which have been used by indigenous groups for hundreds, if not thousands of years. For the purposes of this lecture, we won't be going into further detail. Now we'll move on to an overview of more specific psychedelic medicines. Ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is a psychedelic brew used in Central and South America, primarily in the Amazon region, and is made from the combination of Banisteriopsis vine and chacruna leaves, usually along with other additives. Chacruna leaves contain the indole alkaloid DMT, or dimethyltryptamine. As an aside, DMT has been speculated to be naturally or endogenously created and secreted in human brains, and that it plays a role in hallucinations, near-death experiences, and dreams. While it is confirmed in rodent brains, in the pineal gland specifically, there has not been enough research to confirm that if it is endogenous to human brains, that it actually plays a role in its theorized effects. The mechanism of action of ayahuasca relies on the combination of the two main ingredients. The monoamine oxidase inhibitor, or MAOI, present in Banisteriopsis vine allows for DMT from the chacruna leaves to be effective in oral dosing. Ayahuasca has been used as a spiritual medicine by indigenous people in the Amazon for several hundred years, possibly even over 1,000 years, based on more recent discovery by ethnobotanists in Bolivia. There are hundreds of indigenous groups across South America who use ayahuasca, and the most well-known group are the Shipibo Conibo people in Peru. In some groups, ayahuasca is used during war, for creative inspiration, for storytelling, and when solving interpersonal conflict. Ayahuasca is also used for physical health and healing, and for diagnosis of disease. And the juice of chacruna leaves is used as an eye drop to treat migraine headaches. Traditional use typically involves a period of preparation, which includes restriction of certain activities and foods, like sex and red meat. The brew is consumed during a ceremony led by a shaman, who usually sings songs called icaros, meant to induce a state of awareness and healing. The medicine typically brings about brightly colored visions and purging, which includes vomiting and diarrhea, and is believed to release built-up emotions and negative energy. The role of the shaman is to help create a safe space and facilitate the healing process. The belief is that both the physical and psychological aspects of the experience play a critical role in allowing people to enter the spirit world and be guided through the healing process. Iboga, or ibogaine. Ibogaine is an indole alkaloid that is extracted from several naturally occurring plants of the Tabernaceae family. Its name is derived from the Tabernaceae iboga plant native to Western Central Africa, specifically the areas of Gabon, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Republic of Congo. Ibogaine has been used as a sacred medicine for thousands of years by practitioners of the Bwiti religion in Western Africa, and is believed to provide a pathway to gnosis, a direct mystical experience that provides communion with ancestors and spirits. Ibogaine can induce a dreamlike state, causing introspection, dissociation, and altered states of consciousness. Iboga ceremonies are held on a weekly basis, can last for several days, and involve the entire community. These ceremonies typically include offerings to nature, ritualistic bathing, and other practices. Ibogaine effects are derived from its impact on several neurotransmitters, including serotonin as a potent serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It also acts on kappa and mu opioid receptors. Psilocybe mushrooms. As I've already mentioned, the history and distribution of psilocybin-containing mushrooms is extensive. According to a recent review, there are over 140 species, and they're found growing across all continents except Antarctica. Psilocybin mushrooms are also called magic mushrooms and contain both psilocybin and psilocin, which are tryptamine alkaloids that act on a number of serotonin receptors, most notably the 5-HT2A receptor. In humans, the psychoactive compound is psilocin, which is converted from psilocybin through a process involving the removal of a phosphate group after it's ingested. It is hypothesized that psilocybin mushrooms were used in religious rituals as early as 7,000 years ago, as evidenced by prehistoric mushroom art found in caves in Spain. And the frescoes of bee-headed mushroom shaman in Algeria, shown in an earlier slide, may be one of the oldest records suggesting mushroom use, which was potentially 9,000 BCE. Fungi containing psilocybin and psilocin have an extensive history of use in Mesoamerican peoples for religious communion, divination, and healing, which spans from Aztec to the present day. Mushrooms have been consistently referred to as food of the gods, as the Aztec believed that psilocybin allowed people to reach the world beyond and bring back divine knowledge. For the Mazatec people of Mexico, psilocybin mushrooms are used in ceremony for religious purposes, as well as seeking solutions to interpersonal problems, finding lost objects, and reconnecting with lost loved ones. Amanita muscaria. Amanita muscaria is commonly known as fly agaric or fly amanita, and is the iconic toadstool with the white dotted red cap. It is native to the Northern Hemisphere, but is now found throughout the world and has been used by indigenous people in Siberia and the Sapmi people of Northern Scandinavia as an entheogen for hundreds of years. Amanita is officially classified as a poisonous mushroom and can cause severe toxicity or even death at high doses or when not prepared properly. Amanitas contain two main psychoactive compounds, ibotenic acid and mucimol, which are responsible for the physiologic and hallucinogenic properties. When amanita are consumed, there is a wide and unpredictable range of responses, from mild nausea, drowsiness, sweating, salivation, auditory and visual distortions, to low blood pressure, seizure, or central nervous system depression. It's theorized that Vikings used Amanita muscaria to induce their trance-like berserker rages, although this is still up for debate. It may more likely have been a type of nightshade that was used. Peyote. Peyote is a small cactus native to Mexico and southwestern Texas that contains the psychoactive alkaloid mescaline, which, like other psychedelic compounds, acts on 5-HT2A, 5-HT1A, and 5-HT2C receptors. Indigenous Americans have used peyote in their spiritual and medicinal practices for thousands of years, and it is continued use by Native American tribes, including the Navajo and the Huichol people within the Native American Church in the United States. In traditional peyote preparations, the top of the cactus is cut off, leaving the large taproot along with the ring of green photosynthesizing area to grow new heads. These heads are dried to make disc-shaped buttons, which are chewed during ceremonies led by Native American elders. Peyote can induce deep introspective experiences as well as visual and auditory hallucinations. Like with other psychedelic medicines, peyote is also used for physical healing in everything from toothaches to diabetes to asthma and blindness. I know that was a rapid fire list of psychedelic plants, locations, and moments in history. I encourage each of you to explore in more depth any one of these psychedelics listed, or even one that I left out. And feel free to reach out to me if you'd like more reading resources. Since this module has been focused on psychedelic plants used by various cultures in preparation for focusing on modern and contemporary usage, in our discussion for this module, please share your reflection on how past and indigenous cultural practices and perspectives might inform modern psychedelic cultures. Feel free to use the assigned reading, your own experiences, and any other resources you feel support your reflection. And please remember to keep posts to a limit of 200 words or less in an effort to allow me time to respond and to keep the discussion more conversational. So I will see you all in the discussion forum for this module.